this particular alliance is free to campaign for whoever candidate they deem fit to vie for any constituency in the country. Are things supposed to go this particular way? Is it healthy? Is it helpful?
So I was saying that it's a recipe for disaster. They're all fighting for a common goal. Why should they split themselves? If it was a true alliance, they would have come together to a consensus and say, in this constituency, maybe pave way for us.
Yes.
In that one, pave way for us. And there are so many vacancies. That could have happened, but they decided that to show us, actually, we are seeing very clearly that there is no cohesion whatsoever.
Yes.
Everyone is doing what pleases them at that particular point.
This takes me to the concern that was being raised by the former Vice President, Kumbo Kachari, in that particular campaign rally. He said, everyone have their own home. Everyone have their own place where they call home. And here it is our home. That is exactly what I read in between the lines to say, him expected to be given chance to say, as an alliance partner, we are going to leave it for you, for Freedom Party within the alliance, to field a candidate for this particular by-election. Did you read the same thing, Bawa?
One thing I would say, I think I said it already, that within the alliance, there were some who were just there just for the sake of being there.
Yes.
The true partners were UTM and MCD. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows that. What kind of impact has the Freedom Party ever had in this country? Because with the time that he was VP, I think that time first he was in DPP,
yes.
And then he was
PP.
with the PP. That is when he had a lot of significance.
Yes.
But the Freedom Party has never had any kind of impact to say that you leave this constituency to us. There is no guarantee that they could even have won.
Yes.
Even if they had been given that chance.
Yes. Yeah. No. So all you're saying is such concerns being raised by the former Vice President, Honorable Kumbo Kachari, are baseless when it comes to political significance in terms of contribution to the alliance.
Definitely. There were some people who just jumped onto the bandwagon of the alliance when they, so as you said, it was, let's get DPP out.
Yes.
So whoever decided that they would want to make a name at that time, they pushed themselves into that alliance. Mm-hmm. But what did they actually bring to it? There are about 5 or 6 names there. What did they bring to the alliance? There was certainly nothing. We all knew who was really fighting the DPP at that time. And these are the people who maybe got a bit of the cake. So it is very unfair and unfortunate for those who were just hangers-on to also expect the cake when really they didn't bring anything to the table.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in political terms, Honorable or Reverend Morris Muntali said this is just a passing wave. It is here because of the by-elections. When this by-election goes, all these frenzy will also dissipate. Again, when Honorable Frank Tumpale Mwenefumbo, as spokesperson for the UTM, was contacted for his comment on the very same misfortune, this unfortunate thing, he said, we cannot deny the fact that there are problems in the alliance. Problems are indeed there. But this particular by-elections have exacerbated the problems. Do you share the sentiments?
I think that the second one, the latter, was the one who was really being honest and fair. Because we all know that there are problems. And there's no way I can just start digging up animosity against you when I haven't had it.
Yes.
Where is it coming from?
Yes.
It can't just appear today just because we are competing. If we are competing already, there's a problem there. So Mr. Mwenefumbo was very open, I believe.
Yes.
We all know there are problems. We hear the rumors, and everything in this country starts as a rumor. But as I said, so long as we're seeing the top two, they're still interacting, they're still appearing together in public, presumably in private they meet as well,
yes,
then there's some semblance of normality. Until that rift happens totally, that you see that they can never be in the same room again, that is when we'll have cause to worry.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, you're saying Frank Tumpale Mwenefumbo was the one who was more frank,
yes,
as by his name to say, he was more frank with what is happening in the alliance. I remember when I interviewed the Vice President in the run-up to the 2020 fresh presidential polls, I said, if there is a camp in this particular alliance that needs to do more healing, is the UTM camp, because you have served as Vice President already for this particular country, and in this particular alliance, you are also going as a vice president. Should you happen to win, and now they won the election, he is also vice president. Certainly, if there is a camp or a group of people that need to do more healing, are the UTM people. Do you see them as being bitter because perhaps, I clearly put it to him to say, I heard you, Mr. Vice President, say at Masinta to say, I hope you heard that particular sentiment from the Vice President. He said, we want do you share my sentiment to say these UTM people need to do a lot of healing, that their vice president or that their president of the party is also vice president this time around?
There are times that you have to be very realistic. They didn't have the numbers. And if you look at the figures that we had in the past election,
yes.
Professor Mutharika still got his initial figures.
Yes.
These two had to come together to get the numbers that they needed to get into power. Meaning that even if they had stood on their own, I don't think they would have made it.
Yes.
Going into the alliance and as a vice president was a very pragmatic move, because he knew that he did not have the numbers to make it to the top position.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they need healing, but deep down they know that they could not have made it, not at that particular point. Maybe if they had consolidated themselves up to maybe 2025,
mm-hmm.
but at that moment they wouldn't have made it.
Do you think that particular bitterness is still brewing amongst the UTM followers?
And that is why I say that it does not make sense to be bitter. Did they have the figures? Go and look at the figures of the Malawi Electoral Commission. They came together and they still made the numbers that they made when they had split. Professor Mutharika maintained his numbers, meaning it was still a very tough fight. If they had gone as an entity on their own, they might not have made it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what should the president and the vice president do now that their followers keep on fighting to say each time they take to the political podium, mudslinging, bad political speaking to one another, and they seem to be having everything as rosy as it used to be. And like you put it, they're still sharing some good and quality emotion when it comes to their relationship. You can't tell any differences, you can't tell any breakaway, and you can't tell perhaps any disagreements between the two of them. The body language, perfect as it used to be, they still speak. But their followers are trying to spoil the party in terms of running the government. What should they do?
Sometimes you lead by example. If they stand firm and show no rift between the two of them. Remember, there was once a bad time where we would have a vice president, but when the president is leaving the country, he would leave the country in the hands of
someone more junior.
The vice president was ignored. He was vilified. There were so many things said and written about him. He persevered, of course, but then we all know that the people were getting emboldened because of the body language right from the top.
Yes.
Where the president made it clear that he was no longer interested in this young man who was working with him.
Yes.
So this time around, so long as they still stand firm and show that they are united, there is still some hope that they could instill some sense down there.
A direct question, Bawo, you have reminded me of something very important. When you look at the political space that the vice president is given, do you think the UTM followers are justified to be complaining? Because like you rightly put it, the body language, as perfect as it used to be, the conversation, the emotion is there, they understand one another. Like you also gave an example. That particular time when he was with the DPP, we could see the vice president being skipped and having his powers usurped.
He wouldn't even get into the public again.
Now we are trying to be comparative here. But when you look at this particular time, you see that everything he has, he can hold meetings, he can travel as he wants. When the president is living out of the country, everything is left in his hands. What are these UTM followers complaining about?
That's exactly my point, that if the two at the top continue leading by example and showing that they are not divided, the other ones, they'll be disgruntled, fine. Maybe they'll fall away, maybe they'll break away. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, if these two remain as they are, maybe there is a bit of hope for this country. Mm-hmm. We'll still see, of course, when we get to the next election, when the bone of contention is about who stands as the next president of the country. Of course, that split will happen. It must happen. It's normal that it will happen. Mm-hmm. But for now, for the sake of the country, if they remain together, then everything is fine.
you say everything is fine as long as the president and the vice president are glued. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
You think so?
I hope so. Definitely. I'm hoping so. For the sake of this country.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, moving forward, Mbawo, we will take a very short break and then we'll be back so that we can finish the second segment of our program. Right, today I'm talking to Mbawo Chavula. She's the news editor for Blantyre Synod Radio. She's helping us understand what is happening in terms of the verbal war which is taking place in the Tonse Alliance. Is it because of the 26th October by-elections that this particular fight has been exacerbated? Or it is always the case that things in the Tonse Alliance are not working? We are here to see, and of course, we'll all witness when the by-elections are conducted. We'll take a very short break, and then we'll be back with the program. Welcome back to the Cauldron here on Times Television. This is where editors meet, and this week we have Mbawo Chavula. She's the news editor from the Blantyre Synod Radio. We are looking at the verbal war which is taking place in the Tonse Alliance. There is a lot of bad-mouthing when it comes to the political campaigns that these particular parties are staging in the various constituencies that these by-elections are taking place. Mbawo, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Yes, we were talking about the issue of having the president and the vice president perhaps giving us some semblance of normalcy in terms of their relationship. But the problem seems to be very much right at the bottom with the followers. Now, I want to get back to the analogy as given by the president to say he is the driver, the vice president is the mechanic, the civil service and all of us happen to be the conductors and all the needed stuff so that the bus can move. Starting with the president, he says he is the driver, he knows where he's going. Now, the vice president is the mechanic, entrusted with making sure that all the repairs in the civil service reforms, in the public service reforms are done so that this particular vehicle is running smoothly. And the civil service and the rest of us are conductors to make sure that all the goods that are supposed to be on board are there, very well taken care of, so that are delivered to wherever we are going. A perfect analogy as given by the president?
I actually found it quite unfortunate because people were saying, why do you feel the need to be moving around with a mechanic if the bus is in perfect condition? So we all know that we have a lot of problems in this country.
Yes. Was he not just being realistic?
He was telling the truth, of course, he's in charge.
Yes.
And there have been complaints that the vice president maybe is not fulfilling whatever. That is what actually the UTM is taking advantage of now.
Yes.
To say he's not driving this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
it is our gentleman.
Whatever is happening is not his fault because he cannot take the wheel. The wheel is in the hands of somebody else.
Yes.
And this person has made it very clear that he's firmly in charge, in control of the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
So it worked for him. It also didn't work for him because it was made perfectly clear to all of us that he is in charge. And indeed, the other one is just a subordinate. And it's up to the driver to tell the mechanic, there's something wrong with my car.
Yes.
Can you fix this place? I'm feeling this, there's something wrong here. Can you fix it? But if the driver does not tell the mechanic to check the car, you assume everything is okay. And life must go on.
All right. Now, Bawo, do people in Malawi understand how the presidency works? Now, I'm looking at this particular issue to say, when we say the president and the vice president, they are almost in the same office. It is one simply sitting in front and the other following, but they are essentially in one office. Do people understand to say these two people do share notes and they know everything that is happening? Now, mostly that these two are running an alliance government. Do people understand this particular fact?
I'll differ with you on that one to say that they are one and the same. They are not. One has got a lot of power, the other one doesn't have any power.
Now, you're talking about in terms of power.
It's almost like a ceremonial thing, because the vice president cannot assent to any bills. He cannot tell us what to do, basically. The president has the power to decree some things. The vice president can only come in if the other one is incapacitated. So to say that they are one and the same, I don't think that's true. And to say they share notes, I also don't believe that, because we've seen vice presidents in this country ostracized, pushed out, and nothing changed. The president was still in full control. Was there had been pushed out. We have had a vice president told he had constructively resigned in this country. The country still ran with the president, meaning that this is just merely a ceremonial office, unless they are actually deliberately given some powers, which so far hasn't happened.
You have brought in a very good point, Mbao. I will take you by your words to say, when I interviewed Dr. Chilima, that particular time that I had alluded to earlier on, he told me that in Malawi, the vice president's office, I'll put it the way he put it, he was telling me, he said, the late Malawi's vice president, the late Justin Malewezi, told him, this is what he was telling me. You know what, Jawezi? The late Justin Malewezi told me that in Malawi, the vice president's office is a poisoned charlotte.
Wow.
That's what he said. Mr. Malewezi telling Dr. Chilima that the vice president's office in Malawi is a poisoned charlotte. That's what Dr. Chilima was telling me, that he was told by the late vice president, Dr. Malewezi. Now, my question is, you said we all see how much freedom and space Dr. Chilima is being given. Do you think this particular office of the vice president in Malawi at present is still a poisoned charlotte when you look at all that is happening?
We're looking at the fact that people had a lot of expectation from the vice president.
Yes.
But the very fact that he has failed to deliver in what he had promised shows that he does not have the powers. And indeed, the office, we have seen Dr. Chilumpai was ostracized.
Yes.
Former President Joyce Banda, when she was in that office,
yes,
she was ostracized. She also fell out with her vice,
yes,
Kumbo Kachali.
Yes.
It happens to everyone. So maybe this government is deliberately trying to present a front to show that they are not going to do what the other ones did.
Yes.
But behind the scenes, you know that he is literally, he doesn't have any power. He's totally
You think so?
I would think so, looking at what is happening. Yeah.
Now, positively speaking, do you think if the office of the vice president is given what it needs? Because he continued to say, you know, the best we can do is the vice president should not be at the mercy of the president. He shouldn't be given what to do. He should hold a portfolio. We now know he holds the Ministry of Economic Planning and Development. He also leads the public sector reforms. The vice president is able to do almost everything that he desires and sees fit to do in this particular country. The benefit that we can get in having a VP's office that is functional and that is only ceremonial, do you think we have any that do accrue to the country?
Even holding those portfolios, at the end of the day, whatever you do still has to pass through what the president wants. So we have the public sector reforms. Now we had that unit that was launched last week.
Yes,
so
PTU.
So these things are basically like almost the same thing. Though they tried to make it seem like they're different things, but it's like a duplication. We also have the one that is headed by the 2063 vision.
Yes, NPC.
Yes.
National Planning Commission.
All these things are doing the very same thing.
Yes.
Rendering whatever portfolio he holds obsolete to a certain extent. Because like, there are 3 different units doing basically the same thing. So how does he now have autonomy? When at the end of the day, he will bring in his reforms. We've never seen anything about it. This unit is now starting. It's a new big thing. After that, Mr. Montali will come, Dr. Montali will come in with the 2063, whatever. They'll launch. What happens to that? How do they gel and meet at a common point? That is now the biggest problem.
We have discussed governmental issues. Political statement, Bao, that I want from you. Looking at all these moving parts in the Tonse Alliance, given chance or hired as a consultant to give a 2-minute advice to the Tonse Alliance, what would you say?
Think of the people first. Forget politics, look at the people of Malawi and what they need. Put the politics aside, look at yourself as a patriot, as a citizen,
yes,
as a Malawian who wants the best for themselves as well as their families. Don't think of things in terms of MCP, UTM and stuff like that. Maybe things would work that way.
Does the crop of politicians that we have in Malawi able, or do we have a crop of politicians in Malawi who can do whatever you're saying, Bawo?
Right now, I don't see any. Unfortunately, I don't.
You don't see any?
No.
Who would put the country first and everything else behind?
You know, the problem is people talk a lot, so they'll say whatever, but when now it comes to implementing, it's very different from what they tell us. So now we're just in a state of shock and fear and say, what next for this country? What next for us? If we're doomed together, unfortunately.
All right.
Yeah.
We take a break, Mbawo. We'll be back with the international segment. We take a very short break, and then we'll be right back with the international segment, and then we'll get to the newsroom segment so that we conclude this particular program. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Cauldron, and this time around we are getting to the international segment so that we also see what is happening internationally. Mbawo, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump has filed a lawsuit seeking to block White House records from his tenure. They are being obtained by the Congressional Committee investigating January 6 Capitol riot Trump supporters' invasion. You remember what happened in the U.S. when Mr. Donald Trump was not happy with the progress of the outcome of the elections. There happened something very unfortunate, and we saw a multitude of supporters of Mr. Trump storming the Capitol, and Mr. Joe Biden spoke and said this was an invasion of the citadel of peace. That's what he said. Now, I want to look at this particular challenge that he's saying he's trying to put up a lawsuit against this particular decision. Is this his right to do this, or he's simply trying to cast a political card?
Obviously, everyone has a right to fight for their life, because once they open up the records for that, next thing they'll go to his tax returns, which they are already after. He's basically a man fighting for his survival.
Now, okay, let us look at what happened, Mawo. Was what happened that particular time when his supporters invaded the Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Was that the right thing to do? Understandably, we heard that Mr. Trump had given them a go-ahead. Allegedly.
That is the word now,
yes.
Allegedly.
Yes.
One thing you should know, when a nation is in decline, the people can actually now defile its cathedrals, its sacred places.
Yes.
Capitol is sacred to the U.S.
Yes.
That is their history. So if the people actually had the guts to go and storm Capitol, you should know there's something seriously wrong fundamentally with that nation. And what it did was to open the eyes of everyone across the world, and even within Capitol itself, within Congress, to realize that they are on a decline. So all this trying now to put the blame on Trump, basically it shows, because he showed that their systems were very weak. How do you storm Capitol? How did that even happen? All those soldiers, all that security, shows there's something wrong, fundamentally wrong with the whole system. It is not a question of one man. Even the fact that they could have one man who would command people like that, most like in a manner like Hitler or Stalin,
yes,
then you should know there's something wrong with the so-called democracy. Yeah.
Now, this lawsuit that Mr. Trump is trying to file, what is it trying to address?
He's trying to protect himself. Because there were some people who are hell-bent on seeing him in jail before he dies. And he definitely, although I do not see it happening, that a former sitting president would actually go to jail, I doubt that would happen. But also, it's a question of him still being in the limelight as he tries to run again, because he made it clear that he's going to run again. He's consolidating himself for that.
Exactly. Now, that takes me to the next question to say, we heard that authorities there tried to move a motion to say they wanted to ban Mr. Donald Trump from contesting again in any election in the U.S. Was that fair?
It's not fair. The question I said, in the first place, how did he even
even from the GPO side, from his own Republican side, the people were in support of this particular move. To say this, Mr. Trump, he threw our party into utter disrepute. So we are supporting the idea to say he has to be banned from participating politically in anything in the U.S.
He's not the kind of man who would go down without a fight. And one thing you should know, this man got 70 million votes.
Yes.
That is not a small figure. 70 million is a lot of people. So despite the people saying that they did like him, he was a rebel rouser, what have you, but if you could garner that kind of support, he had a lot of silent majority because people were ashamed to support him publicly. But he had a lot of silent support, especially from the white side. So don't ever rule him out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you a Trump supporter?
Obviously, everyone knows that.
I could see from the leaning that you're taking to say she must be a Republican. Now, my next question, Bao, is any lessons that perhaps we have learned to say sometimes when the people express their will, it's better just to let that particular will prevail. In this particular instance, if people had voted for Mr. Joe Biden, were the Trump supporters supposed to do this particular thing to say they wanted to derail or to stop the wheels of justice in circumventing the will of the people in terms of the U.S.?
It was a test of how strong their institutions are. And they say, if you reach the point of storming Capitol in a country which is supposedly the bastion of democracy, the biggest role model for supposedly democracy in the world, then they should examine their whole system, right from the fundamentals. What caused that big rift where people would actually look up to Trump as put him on a pedestal as somebody to save them? Something is definitely wrong.
As a supporter and a political pundit, does Mr. Trump stand any chance of winning again? Should he contest an election in the future?
Depends on how Biden and Harris conduct themselves in the next 2 years.
What do you mean?
The people are already complaining. One thing I've noted about the U.S. media is that they really attack somebody when they're in power. Because even the attacks on Trump, I think they're much milder now. The attacks are on Biden. So if they choose to focus now on putting him, showing him in a bad light, the people would definitely turn. And in politics, you never say never. Look at next door. Even right here, we've had people who contested 4 or 5 times.
Yes.
And they did it eventually. So never say never.
Even Mr. Hichilema did it the 60th time.
Yes.
What is it that you like about Donald Trump?
He tells it as it is. He's not a hypocrite.
So you don't...
What you see is what you get.
You don't like hypocrites?
I don't like pretenders.
Do we have them in Malai?
Obviously. They're everywhere.
Are you sure?
Yes.
All right, Mo, we'll take the very last break and then we'll be back with the newsroom segment. Yeah. We go for the very final break and then we'll be right back with the newsroom segment and then we wind up the program for today. This is the Cauldron where editors meet and I'm having Bawo Chavula, the news editor for Blantyre Synod Radio. Don't go away because the newsroom segment is right back soon after this break. Welcome back to the final lap of the program for today, the Cauldron, where editors meet. I have Mbawo Chavula, the news editor for Blantyre Synod Radio. Mbawo, the very final mile we need to take now. We want to look at the issue of the newsroom, journalism and ethics. On Wednesday, at least 7 girls aged between 14 and 16 were rounded up at Biwi Township in Lilongwe in an effort by the Minister of Gender, Children and Social Welfare, Mrs. Kaliati, or Patricia Kaliati, to rescue young girls from suspected sex trafficking. Pictures of these girls were all over the social media, despite them being underage and the need to be protected was very much on stage. But we saw the faces and everyone is seeing the faces even up to date. Let's bring the traditional media into the equation here. Are we doing our best to make sure that we follow through the ethics of journalism when it comes to covering underage, mostly in negative circumstances?
For the mainstream media, they did very well. The pictures, I saw them on the social channels.
Yes.
We have some influencers, we have the social sites.
Yes.
And they are the ones who actually plastered the faces of these young girls.
Yes.
It was very annoying to me, actually. They
Yes.
actually said it. But, you know, journalism is not just journalism. It's not just taking a photo. We have ethics. We actually go to school for this.
Of course.
Unfortunately, nowadays, everyone wants to be a journalist. Everyone wants to be the first one to break the news. Another thing that I noted was the fact that maybe the minister had gone in with a large entourage. It's like it was a kind of show.
Yes.
We are going to storm this place, and we are going to get this to rescue these children. And definitely there were some journalists there. I'm sure she went with journalists from maybe big media houses.
Yes.
There were also community members now with their smartphones. Everyone is a journalist now with their smartphone. And they took these photos. Everyone now knows these girls. If they are integrated back into society, what happens to them? The stigma is with them now. Everyone knows they were in Lilongwe doing sex work. I hope they are going to get really rehabilitated. I understand they're in safe houses now, but after that, they still have to go back into their societies.
Yes.
And what happened was quite unfortunate.
All right. We've got pieces of legislation in the country that watch over these particular matters. Do you think the authorities or those that are entrusted with authority to enforce adherence to, let's say we have the Electronic Security, and we call it Electronic Transactions in Cybersecurity Act, and we've got MACRA, we've got issues of copyright, and even matters just that we have in the country to make sure that matters of this nature don't happen. Do you think they're working?
I believe that MACRA maybe should actually start biting. Because we have so many funny websites, so many pages on social media. And the things that they write, the things they churn out, and you find these things are still standing.
Yes.
These photos are still standing, and you say, MACRA has the power to shut down this place. The police have the power to do this with the authority of MACRA, of course, and that law you're talking about. But we just let things slide. If some big example was made, maybe 2-3 times consistently, to show that they mean business, if you breach this law, definitely there will be consequences. I'm sure we'll have less of this.
Do you think a day can come that maybe you and your friends or any other institution in the country can come and take the burden just to start, I'm just trying to find out from you, just to start, let's say, a campaign going out to the people in terms of how they can use social media? Because we know it is not possible to say, don't do this, don't do that. But maybe if we start little by little, educating the masses to say, you don't do this when you want to use the social media. Is it possible?
It is possible, and I think that would be the most important, because what happens is that something leaks, and then the government just comes out and says, if we find out you did this, we are going to, the law will come on you, like a threat, sort of.
Yes.
Instead of civic education, it's like more of a threat.
Yes.
And we just see that maybe so-and-so, he wrote something on Facebook and was sued, or what have you. But we haven't really had an example where somebody did wrong and they were shown the right way to do things without being threatened. Maybe that would be the best way.
Maybe that can help.
Yes.
All right, Mbawo, I should thank you for taking time to talk to us in the Cauldron today.
Thank you.
We hope to have you again next time. Thank you, Mbawo. That's Mbawo Chavula, the news editor for Blantyre Synod Radio. We thank her very much for being available for this particular program. This is the Cauldron where editors meet. We have discussed the verbal war which is taking place in the Tonse alliance amongst the partners there. And of course, we have also looked at the lawsuit as filed by the former president of the United States of America, Mr. Donald J. Trump. And again, we have finished with the issue of publication of pictures of the underaged girls that were rounded up in a bid led by the Minister of Gender, Patricia Kaliati, to make sure that they are mopped away from the various bars and lodges in town. My name is Jawes Banda. Until next time, when we come with yet another edition of the Cauldron, I'm just saying keep watching Times and enjoy the rest of our programs.
Big up,